basically three levels of people. First of all, at the office level, it would help the office leadership know, what skills are in their office, what skills does the person actually have. Because they might not know that somebody's an expert at Dynamo or Grasshopper, and they really are, or any other tool we have. It can also help at the project level. The PMs can also determine, well, maybe these people should be on the project at this certain phase using a certain tool because they have higher skill levels. It can also help at the user level to help with their career goals. If they want to be Grasshopper computational experts, well, they might need training. So that's the idea behind what we're trying to solve here. And if you keep the questions to the end, that'd be great. But if you have anything pressing to ask, I'll definitely answer them. So this is how we're actually trying to solve it. So we have a simple tool that we have here that the office leadership team has for each office. And they determine what their desired skill goals are by user role. And we have, again, over 70 tools. We actually have them by tool category. We have a list of preferred tools, which include Rhino, Dynamo, Grasshopper, Revit, and a bunch of other tools. In this case, Boston would want their designers, would like the designers to be at advanced level at Revit. Would like their project managers to be at least beginner level at Revit. That's their desired skill levels. So they fill this out for the tools that they care about. Not necessarily all 72 tools that we have currently, but the ones they care about. And the next step is the users fill out basically a SurveyMonkey skills survey. I'm guessing you guys are all familiar with SurveyMonkey, right? Okay. And a certain online survey. And they can fill out their skill level anywhere from no knowledge all the way to expert. We take both bits of information. We then the office leadership reviews the data we have in Power BI, and actually Power BI service, the online in say Chrome, and then they determine what users may need training in what skills and what tools, I should say, and then we organize the training, either internal or external, depending on what the need is. All our preferred tools, the firm actually provides external training for. All the non-preferred tools, the offices have to pay for themselves. It's not internal training. That's kind of how it works in our firm. Our firm's different, and I respect them, I assume. Quick class survey here. Who's used Power BI before? Okay. Who's used Tableau or another similar tool besides Power BI? Okay. Who considers themselves an expert at Excel, like doing formulas and that kind of thing? Okay. That's good. Okay, so yeah, Power BI is a tool where you can combine multiple sources of data, or even just one, and interpret that data in many different ways for what your needs are. And it's really kind of hard to say it's used for one thing, but that's how we use it in our firm, to interpret the data so that our offices can use that data for the knowledge they need. And I have a couple links here. Power BI is free. The free version, you can do anything you're doing today in the free version. Besides Power BI, there's something called DAX, and it's a scripting language made by Microsoft. And I relate DAX to similar to if you use Dynamo, relate DAX to like a Python script in some ways, because DAX really can enhance Power BI to give you more abilities. And I'll show you some examples actually that actually doing it too. It's not the easiest language to use, to be honest, but it does help in a lot of cases. Okay, thank you for attending. The rest of the class, I'm going to be out of PowerPoint because I don't want to be in PowerPoint anymore. So next slide, I'll show you what we're going to be doing, but this is my thank you slide. So if you can fill out the survey in the end, great. Information's on the left-hand side. So this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start a brand new Power BI file. We're going to bring in the survey tool skills. In this case, it's going to be an exported SurveyMonkey Excel spreadsheet. We're going to bring in the information from the, this should work actually, bring in information from the leadership desired skills, which is the CSD, for 3 of our offices. In Power BI, we're going to create a report that shows how they can interpret that data to determine who may need training. Make sense? Okay, so that's pretty much it for PowerPoint. So let's get rid of PowerPoint. And on your side, as I'm taking these off, I apologize. It's easier for me to do this without my glasses on. So, again, it's a free tool you can download. If you do Google search Power BI, download, you'll find it really easily. For those who are not familiar with Power BI, this is the main interface, the report page, where you create your, they call them visuals. You put graphs and charts on here. I'll go through the interface very briefly here, but we're not really going to look at this data view very much. This is where you have multiple sources of data where you can link them together to see how they're linked together. And we'll look at that a little bit. These are the default graphs or visuals that you could use in Power BI. These two tabs here, one is called the Fields tab, where you add values to your graphs or visuals. This one here is where you make them pretty. You change text size, you change colors, you do fun stuff like that. Let's do this. Let's actually just get started with this, and I'm going to bring in that SurveyMonkey data. So if I go to Get Data, you can bring data from a lot of different locations, and they actually added SurveyMonkey recently, believe it or not, as a beta. So a lot of ways you can bring data in from different types of databases and sources. In this case, we're using Excel for the Survey Data Monkey data. And it is an export from SurveyMonkey. I did change any confidential information, but other than that, it's a direct export. So we'll bring that one in. It's only one worksheet, so I'll just pick that worksheet and hit load. You'll notice that most of the time in this class is going to be about manipulating the data in Power BI. Those of you who know Power BI know that that's where the strength is, where you have to change the data so you can use it in the visuals. That's kind of where it all comes together. So right now you can see in the SurveyMonkey spreadsheet, there's so many columns, right? We're going to edit this actual data so we can use it in our visuals. So there's a couple ways you can do that. One is to right-click on here and go to Edit Query, which will open a query editor, or you can do it here. Either way, I'll do the same thing. Open up a second window. So here's the first window, here's the second window. Right now, this is what you would see in Excel. So I didn't make any changes yet whatsoever. So this is coming, again, directly from SurveyMonkey. So first up, there are certain columns that I'm just going to trash because we don't need them at all. So I'm going to trash these first three columns here. I'm just going to remove columns. And by the way, anything we do in Power BI does not affect the source data, just so you realize that. So the actual Excel spreadsheet or anything else is not being changed whatsoever. It's only happening in Power BI. We're going to trash these columns because they're null. Again, I didn't create them. They came from SurveyMonkey. After that, you can see there's a date for the survey. There's the usernames, their email addresses, their offices, the roles in their offices. And then we have 72 tools of their information, of their knowledge, of all of our tools in the first row here. And some you'll recognize, some you won't, because some are homegrown tools and most of them are vault tools. Okay. First thing we're going to do is I want to actually make the first row the header, because most of these rows are tools. Most simple, just go to the Home tab and click on Use First Row as Header. So now the first row has every tool listed instead of actually being in the first row, it's a header. Notice there's no undo button. If you undo anything, use the applied steps here. I can get rid of that last step by clicking that X. So all the steps are kind of stored as a history here. We can undo. Next thing I'm going to do is this is a survey, like I said, so I've noticed that these names are all kind of uppercase, lowercase, all over the place, right? Let's change that by going to the Transform tab and go to Format. Now I'm going to go capitalize each word, just so everything's consistent. Then with an email address, I'll do something similar. I'll make them all lowercase. So again, these are steps that are right here that I can undo at any time. Next thing we're going to do is change some of these headers. So this header here, I'll just call this date. And I'm just going to get rid of this semicolon. So SurveyMonkey put in. I'll get rid of that semicolon. We'll call this one office. And we'll call this one role. So far so good, but right now we have all the information here, but we still can't use the data in the way we need to use it because of the way every tool is set up in a column like this. We need to actually do what's called an unpivot column for all these tools. As you can see, there's basically a row for every user. And there's 192 users right now, 192 rows. There's 76 columns. What I need to do is I need to create a row for each user for each tool. So in other words, in this case, Sunny here, when I finish doing what I'm about to do, I have about 72 rows, one for each tool. And it's easier to show you than to actually explain it, to be honest. So let me just show you. I'll just pick all these tools. And if I go to transform and I go to unpivot column, that's going to convert basically all these columns into two columns. A column that has all their tool names and a column that has its actual skill value. So I'll do an unpivot column. And that's all it is. And then you look at Sunny. And look how many rows we have now, over 1,000, because every person has 72 rows. So that's the first thing we need to do. Then we're going to change this header to be tool, and this one to be skill value. Okay, there's one more thing we're going to do before we go back into actually create some graphs. I'm going to add a actual index column for these skill values. So I'm going to go to add column. I'm going to go to conditional column. And we'll call this one here skill value index. And I'll show you why in a minute, why it's needed. Basically, it's a list of it's just if statements here to create a new column. So I'm going to pick skill value. So if skill value equals no knowledge, I'll make the value 0 in that column. I need an if statement for each skill value. So there's no knowledge, there's basic, there's beginner, there's intermediate, advanced, and expert. So let me just try that quickly here. So basic is 1. And we're doing this, and whatever information you get, use Power BI with, you'll have to do something similar or something completely different, depending on what you're using it for. But most of the time, you have to do changes inside the actual query editor to do what you need to do in the visuals. That's just the way it is, right? In these kind of tools. Advanced, and then expert. So there are 6 different skill types here. If none of these values are found, there'd be nothing in the cell. So I'll hit OK. And the next thing I'm going to do here in this query editor is notice that each one of these columns have a type. Actually, have a type. I go to home here. This is the type data type text, right? And actually, this is the data type date time. I want this one to be a whole number. So I can either change it here, or I can just click on this button here and go to a whole number. And it's added another type there, another step, I should say. So I'm going to close this and go back to our main page. You'll see all this change. So now the data is usable in our graphs. That's kind of what we're doing here. So the next step we're going to do is I'm going to create a set of buttons up top for each office. And we have 3, again, because of time constraints. I'm not going to use one of these visuals. I'm going to use a custom visual. And I compare that to Dynamo as well, because it's like using a custom package. So I can go to import from Marketplace. And really, a lot of developers create their own visuals, but also does Microsoft. I'm going to use one that's called the Chiclet Slicer, which is pretty common. But it is created by Microsoft. But you can go through these and see what each one does and play with them as much as you want. They're all free. And hit OK. So I brought in this Chiclet Slicer. I'll place this on my report. And I'm just going to drag this all the way across the top. And they update this tool every month, by the way, pretty much still. So they keep adding new abilities, which is great. So I'm going to just drag Office into here on the company. So right off the bat, we have just these 3 offices. Now I'm going to make it a little bit more prettier before I go any further. So let's make this smaller. And then I'm going to go to this Format tab. First, I'm going to only let one piece. Let's save this right here. Next, we're going to bring in a table that has a lot of data in it. And so tables are right here. I'll just click on it and it'll place it right here. One thing you have to know about Power BI is you don't place a visual unless you have another one selected. If you have another one selected, if I pick this one here and I pick on this guy, it'll change to a table, which you don't want to do. So make sure nothing's selected and then click on table in this case. And I'm going to bring in the date field first. So under values, I'll bring in a date. Came in this format, which I don't want. So over here, I can change that just to show the date. And I still don't want to see the time, so I'm going to change that so I only see the date instead of time. So to do that, there's so many ways to change data in Power BI. I'm going to go here, go to the Format tab, the Modeling tab, and just go here, the Format, and change it from basically this to this, so that all I see is the date. Okay? Then I don't care about the time, the actual time they created the survey. And then I'm going to put these other fields in here. So I'll put the office in there. I'll put the name in there, the role, and the skill value. I've got to put the tool in there, but I'll put that in there too, and I'll drag it up a little bit. Okay, so that's our basic table. So right now, if I sort it by skill value index, and I say I pick LA and I pick AutoCAD, I can see right now who the experts in this particular office are. I mean, right now it's somewhat useful. It's going to be made more useful than that in a few minutes, but right now it's somewhat useful. And I can also pick just designers, let's say, and I can control pick maybe interior designers, see more people. Anyway, I want to do some formatting on this table real quick, so it's a little bit better. And under style, you can choose from a bunch of different styles. I like bold header. I'm going to turn on the grid, vertical grid. I'm maybe going too deep into minutiae here, I apologize, but under values, font color is black. Again, I don't like it being not black. Alternate font color, which is every other row, on black as well. And I'll have the alternate background color like gray, just to give some contrast. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this total value, which is at the bottom, which makes no sense in this case. There's no reason for the totals to be there, so let's get rid of that total. Okay, so far that's good. Next thing I want to do is I want to be able to sort this table by this column here. I don't want to sort it by this column here. If I sort by this column here, though, it sorts alphabetically, as you can see, not the way I would want to sort it. There's a way to sort one column by another in Power BI. And when it first came out, it was kind of a mystery to a lot of people, including me, how to make that work right. But they made it much simpler over the last year, I'd say. But the idea is that I can sort one column from another column. So, for example, if I unselect this visual and I pick skill value over here, if I go to modeling, and there's an option here for sort by column, add it. Well, now it sorts by itself, which is skill value. I want to sort by skill value index, which is why I added that column before. So now when I sort by this column, it sorts the way I would want to sort it. But eventually I'm going to get rid of this column. I don't want to necessarily want this column to be in there in the end, because a typical user is not going to see a number. They want to see the actual name of these skill value, right? So that's why that's there. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we are going to actually bring in the other bit of data. I mentioned the actual office leadership desired skill data, so we can use that information as well. So I'll go to home, I'll go back to get data. This is only a text file. And I'll bring that in. And just load it. Now, the thing you have to know about this actual text file here is that it might need a little more manipulation, because if you remember, each one of these guys have different roles, right? So, and they're all stored in one text file. So we need to figure out the best way to use the data per role, per student, per office. So let's go into the query editor again. If I look at this data here, if I right-click on here and go to Edit Query, we have basically a column of the offices and all the tools and all their roles. So the first set are basically the LA studio. If I go down a little bit, you'll see the New York studio. The roles are different. So how do we use this information in a way that makes sense. There's only one way we can do it, unfortunately, and that is actually to parse out this table in some ways. So what we're going to do is, first we're going to get rid of this first column, this first row, which means nothing to me. So what you can do is you can go to remove rows, remove top row, and I'm going to remove that top row. Just hit a 1 there to get rid of the top row. And then I'm going to copy this guy 3 times. And again, I'm not touching the original data at all, which is the important part here too. I'm going to call this Los Angeles. I'm going to call this one New York. And we'll call this one Seattle. Now, if I go to Los Angeles, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort this so all I see is Los Angeles data. I don't want to see anything else. I'm going to make the first row the header, like we did earlier. And then I'm going to let's change this to Office. I'm not going to do this for all 3 of these, by the way, so you know, it's going to take forever. I'll call this Tool Group. And we'll call this Tool. Let's change the name. Okay, so that's that. Oop, there it goes. But now we have the same dilemma as we did before. We have all this information in columns. We have to do another unpivot columns. So we have all this data in rows instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick these guys here, and I'm going to do an unpivot columns. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to convert so that we have basically for the office, for every tool, and for every role, we'll see what their value is that the office wants them to have. For LA, in this case, just Los Angeles. I'm going to call this guy role, and I'm going to call this guy office desired skill index. And I'm going to do this here. Expert. So 1 basic. And 2. Actually, what I can do is, if you get what I'm doing right here, and we just go to the next file. Okay, all I'm going to do right now is just do that and another column. That's all I'm going to do for this particular office. Let's get out of this guy here so we don't waste our time here. And let me just apply this real quick and open up the second file. Yeah, sure, why not see it? Okay, so let's go ahead and open the second file real quick here, which is this guy here. You'll see the same information in here as the last one, except that I already filled out those 3 offices. So if you go back into one of these guys in the query editor, so now we have basically, you know, what I just said. All 3 offices have the same data, right? So I did. Next thing you need to do is to make this back into one table. And again, depending on what your data set is, it's going to depend on what you have to do in the query editor to make it work. Unfortunately, this one is a more complicated one. So what I need to do is merge these back into one table, basically. So what I'm going to do is, it's simple, it's not really hard, but I pick on this one here, append. I'm going to have LA already selected. I'm going to select these 2. So they're all in one table. And then I'm going to just call this something else. Okay, so that's good right there, and then I'm going to close and apply. So other than that, it's really the same as what you've seen before. Now, I need a way to connect these 2 tables together. Here's that relationships button here. These are all our data sources. These really don't matter, these 4 right here, but these 2 do matter, because these have the data we need. But there's no way to connect them currently. So we need to actually find a way to connect them. So 1 more column for each of these, and then that will be all we have to do as far as that goes, manipulating the data. I'm going to rename this just so it sorts on top of this guy here. I'm just going to edit query again.
So I need to create some kind of index key so I can connect these two together. That's just the way it is. There has to be a way to be. I want to be able to use the. Let me explain a little bit better. I want to be able to use the tool group, and along with the SurveyMonkey tool set, so that I can create another slicer. And let me show you what I mean by that. So if I create another column, this one's going to be a custom column. And I'm going to call this one index, or whatever you want to call it. And this will let me do a lot of different things, but in this case, I just want to take a number of columns and combine them into one column, the values into one column. So if I put office, and put an end, tool, end, and then role. I'm going to copy this, move this clipboard for a second. And then hit OK. There's another column with all those values. You can do the same thing here. Just call this index. And I'll just paste this in here. Those are the same columns exist here. Okay. Now I'll go back into my home and I'll go back to close and apply. Now, when I go back to relationships here, SurveyMonkey automatically knows that there's a one-to-many relationship between this table and this table. So now it knows I can use these together in some way with my visuals. If that makes sense or not, and I can show you that more later, but that's really what I wanted to do here. Next thing we're going to do is go into the last of my PowerPoint reports I have here, so we'll finish it there. And it's going to be close to what you're going to get in the download.